The Vietnam War was one of the bloodiest wars of the 20th century, and until its last moments it was tragic for military and civilians. In 1975, the United States launched Operation Babylift, a mass evacuation of children from Southeast Asia to North America and other NATO countries. But even that seemingly harmless mission was marked by catastrophe, when a Lockheed C-5A Galaxy crashed just minutes after takeoff, killing more than 70 children and several dozen soldiers. What began as a humanitarian action became the third largest air accident of the U.S. force. In this new military history video, we are going to learn about Operation Babylift, one of the tragic events that ended the Vietnam War. By 1975, the situation in Southeast Asia was untenable for the U.S. Army. More than a decade of combat and constant human and material losses eroded public opinion regarding Uncle Sam's intervention. Fighting communism and confronting the influence of the Soviet Union was an attractive goal for the White House, but at what cost? For this reason, progressive withdrawal operations had been carried out for some time, significantly reducing offensive actions and the dispatch of soldiers. With the Vietnamese city of Da Nang falling in March and Saigon under artillery attack, Gerald Ford, then President of the United States, announced on April 3, 1975 that the government was going to evacuate orphans from those cities. The operation was launched, in part, at the request issued by humanitarian organizations such as Whole Children's Service International, Friends of Vietnam Children and Catholic Relief Service, all organizations that had noticed the hell children were going through in a context of total destruction of cities and loss of their families. The exodus would take place in a series of 30 flights aboard Military Airlift Command cargo aircraft. These were mainly C-5A Galaxy and C-141 Starlifter aircraft, large units specialized in heavy tactical transport. In total, the U.S. government hoped to rescue some 70,000 people. Nobody imagined that one of the powerful and modern Galaxy would be the protagonist of the most impressive aerial tragedy of its generation. On April 4, 1975, just after 4 p.m., a C-5A Galaxy, serial number 68-0218, flew the initial mission of Operation Babylift, departing full of Vietnamese children and American soldiers from Tan Son Nhut. 12 minutes after takeoff, there was a brutal bang. The rear loading ramp anchors failed, causing the tailgate to explode open. This caused a sudden decompression, momentarily filling the cabin with thick fog and heavy mist. This damaged the control cables at the rear, causing 2 of the 4 hydraulic systems to stop working, including those that controlled the ship's pitch and lift. The pilot, Captain Dennis Bud Traynor, and his co-pilot, Captain Tilford Harp, attempted to retake control of the aircraft by performing a 180-degree turn, bringing the Galaxy back to Tan Son Nhut. Despite the chaotic situation and the enormous size of the ship, the crew controlled it with a continuous descent, at a speed of between 463 and 481 kilometers per hour. The pilots managed to bring the plane to 1,200 meters and began the approach to runway 25L of the airport. While making the final turn, the crew increased power to control the rate of descent. The plane touched down at 4:45 p.m. in the vicinity of a rice field. The Galaxy glided for 400 meters, then returned to the air for another 800 meters, crossing the Saigon River to finally collide with a dam. The ship broke into 4 parts. The destruction was complete and occurred in a span of a few seconds. The fuel caught fire, generating such a high temperature that some of the plane's debris melted. In all, 138 people were killed, including 78 Vietnamese children and several dozen Saigon defense soldiers and personnel. The survivors of the accident had to cross the swampy terrain typical of a rice plantation. The impact occurred more than 1 kilometer from the nearest route, so it took too long for medical aid and transport to reach the disaster area. A total of 176 people were recovered, among them several orphans who completed their journey to the United States. The Air Force Committee of Inquiry determined that the survival of those individuals was directly due to the quick action of Airman Trainer and Harp, who also survived and were awarded the Air Force Cross for courage. One of the complications faced when examining the wreckage of the crashed plane was that the parts that had not melted down were looted by the locals, who sold them or used them to reinforce their homes. After all, it was not the fault of the farmers or the rice paddy workers that a gigantic transport plane crashed near their homes. The accident during Operation Babylift was the second operational loss and the first fatal hit of a C-5A Galaxy. Such was the repercussion that several members of Congress demanded the cessation of activities of the entire C-5 fleet. This did not happen, but all the ships were subjected to an intense inspection in search of possible mechanical errors that could trigger similar tragedies. During Operation Babylift, it was possible to relocate more than 2,500 children, who were adopted by families in the United States and in other NATO allied countries such as France, Australia, and Germany. In part, the U.S. government tried to appeal to the pity generated by orphan children, to provide a human touch to the actions of the United States in Vietnam. When the first Vietnamese babies arrived, they were received by President Ford himself, at the Presidio military base in San Francisco. The president got on the ship and, when he came back out, he had an Asian baby in his arms. Of course, the press was strategically positioned to take the best shots of such an endearing moment. Beyond the political intentions, the Babylift operation aroused great controversy, since the question revolved around whether the relocation was in the best interests of the children. Not all were orphans, and many of them over time sought to rediscover their Asian roots. The Vietnam War is full of terrifying stories, but few compare to the seconds lived by those hundreds of orphan children, who watched as the ship that was supposed to transport them to a safe place was sinking out of control. It remains for a future episode to answer if the operation was ethical, if the United States and its allies acted with the future of children as a priority, or if it was a propaganda gesture to improve public opinion about one of the biggest war fiascos of the American power. Thank you for staying until the end. We invite you to subscribe and activate notifications to keep up to date with all our videos. We'll meet again in the next installment of Military History.